What's going on, guys? It's me, Zach, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. In this one, I'm going to go over a few players that I think are worth looking to buy low or sell high on ahead of Week 6. We're, again, a bit over a third of the way through the season, so you probably have a good idea of where your team's standing right now. But in general, I think that it's just really important to make sure that you keep making your team better as the season goes on. I've had plenty of 0-5, 1-4 teams make the playoffs, and plenty of 4-1, 5-0 teams miss it or really tail off towards the end of the year and not compete in the playoffs. So it's important to stay active and make sure your teams get better and better. Personally, I think trading is one of the most fun things to do in fantasy football. I think it's just really important to stay level-headed, and a lot of people are really overreactionary to what happens week to week, and that's generally one of the best ways to capitalize on, and really just one of the best ways to make your teams better. So with that, I do want to take a minute to thank everybody for all the support we've been getting. It's been really cool to see how well the channel's been growing. If this is your first time on the channel, I want to thank you for stopping by, and if you do get anything out of this video, please do give it a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm, helps me know I'm doing a good job. If you want more content, please do subscribe to the channel. You can click the bell so you get notifications when I put out new videos. There are 3 videos each week, and you're also always welcome to refer to my website for rankings. Those rankings are free and more than welcome for you guys to use them. Those start-sit questions. But again, also, if you have any questions, you're also more than welcome to let me know in the comments as well. I love interacting with you guys. It's just part of what makes this whole thing super fun. So, yeah, with that, let's get started with the video. The first buy low for me this week is going to be Justin Herbert. He's obviously been a bit of a disappointment for those of you who drafted him early in fantasy drafts. He sits as the quarterback 10 on the season in total points scored so far, so that's obviously a lot lower than what you expected drafting him probably to be a top 2 or 3 quarterback this season. But I think there's certainly plenty of reason for optimism. Herbert looks totally fine after that rib injury. He's playing great now, so I'm not worried about that at all. He's going to get Keenan Allen back really soon. Maybe not this week, but if not this week, probably the next week. We know how much of a role he plays in that offense. It's been really hard to see this offense try and function with pretty much just Mike Williams and Austin Eckler, so getting that third weapon back is going to really help open things up for them. And then on top of that, the Chargers just have a really nice, fluffy schedule coming forward. They have a matchup with the Broncos this week. The Broncos' defense has been all right, but I think they're going to have no problem putting up points on this team. They did just lose Randy Gregory for some weeks, and they had Brandon Browning also leave the game with an injury last week, so the Broncos are going to have a harder time dealing in a pass rush, and we saw that Colts offense really take a step forward towards the tail end of that ugly game last Thursday, so I think we're going to see it be pretty difficult for the Broncos to really disrupt the quarterback, and we'll see that be a really nice matchup. But then after that, you've got the Chargers obviously facing the Seahawks and the Falcons. Those are 2 really nice, easy matchups. So I think Herbert's pretty set up to go nuclear over the next 3 weeks. This is probably going to be the last week you can get him any sort of bargain. There's a couple leagues where I've seen him getting benched for guys like streaming options in one of the leagues I'm in, which is a pretty competitive league. I have a guy starting Geno Smith over Justin Herbert currently in this week, so I think people are pretty down on him, so if you can get him at any sort of a discount, I think he's worth it. I expect him to finish the year as a top 5 quarterback. Next guy I'd be looking to buy low on ahead of this week is going to be Joe Mixon. He still sits at 6th in snap percentage among running backs this season, so he's definitely staying on the field plenty. I know some of you guys are worried about Samaje Perine getting somewhat involved this last week, but I'm not worried about that at all. We've always seen him come on third downs and 2-minute drill some, but Mixon's still by far the main guy in this offense, and it's a really high-quality offense. It's going to be a lot of points scored, and there's going to be a lot of touchdown scoring opportunities for him, and he's only scored 1 this season. The Bengals have just sort of struggled in the red zone. They haven't looked great, and it's very reasonable to assume that touchdown number is going to regress. He's going to have probably close to double-digit touchdowns by the end of the season, so that number is going to come up, but that would make his points in the season look a hell of a lot better. And we did see his efficiency improve in Week 5. He had a yards per carry around 3 going into that game, and he finished that game with 5.6 yards per carry, so it's nice to see that offensive line sort of figuring things out. We do have to remember that the Bengals basically rebuilt their entire offensive line this offseason, so it's pretty reasonable to assume that it's going to take some time for them to gel. I expect them to get better as the season goes on, so Mixon should get more efficient. He's being used plenty in the receiving game, no more or less really than previous years, so that's encouraging, and the touchdown numbers are just lower than they should be, so the utilization's there. It's going to continue. He's going to be very, very consistent. I expect him to finish the year as a probably top 8 running back on the fantasy, so if you can get him for like RB2 numbers, just because that's how he's been performing, I'd definitely be all over that. So the next guy I'd be looking to buy low on is going to be Courtland Sutton. I think it's sort of a surprising thing that I can include him as a buy low, because I believe he sits as the wide receiver 12 or 13 on the season to this point, depending on your scoring format. So I think that he's actually performed really admirably, despite how poor this Broncos offense has been performing. But I think that in general, there are just a lot of people that are out on this Broncos offense as a whole. I think that that's somewhat understandable, but I think it's also more than reasonable to assume that this Broncos offense is only going to get better. Really, nothing's gone right for them so far. They lead the league in penalties. They lead the league in dropped passes. They've had several fumbles near the goal line. Their red zone percentages are just awful. So this offense is going to get better. It might not be nearly as elite as we anticipated it being, but we also know that Courtland Sutton is the alpha in this offense. He's the guy that's getting most of the targets. He's the guy that's getting the looks in the red zone. So he's going to have plenty of spike weeks, and he's still tied to someone who I believe is a really talented quarterback. Russ is going to get it figured out. Sutton's going to be a top 10 receiver by the end of the season, and honestly, like the way he's been performing so far is at his floor, just because we know that this offense really can't get any worse, and he's still been a low end wide receiver one, high end wide receiver two. So I'd be pretty willing to spend up on getting him. I recently traded DJ Moore and Antonio Gibson for him. That'd be the kind of trade I'd love doing. But anything like that, if you can trade wide receiver two value or anything near that, he's more than worth doing that for. Next guy I'd be looking to buy low on this week is going to be Jalen Waddle. He's coming off of back-to-back dubs just because it's been tough for this Dolphins offense. They've been missing Tua for the last 2 weeks. Jalen Waddle's been banged up himself. So it's just really reasonable to understand that these weeks have been disappointing. But in general, especially this early in the season, whenever a player puts up 2 straight bad weeks, players, fantasy managers sort of start to panic. I think that there are plenty of managers out there that are really worried that he's not going to be that wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1 that they drafted him to be. But their schedule really opens up going forward. They get the Vikings, the Steelers, the Lions, the Bears, and the Browns. So it's a really nice 5-game stretch coming up where I think this offense is really going to get back on track. You probably won't have Tua this week in week 6, but they're going to get Tua back going forward. We also know that Tyreek Hill is banged up now. You think he was seen with a walking boot on after the game. So there's an opportunity here for Waddle to be the healthier wide receiver in this offense. This is an offense that shouldn't have any trouble scoring points in these next 5 weeks. So Waddle's going to bounce back in a big way. I'm not worried about him at all, and I think that you can definitely get him at a big discount right now. The last buy low for me this week is going to be Drake London. He's been heavily involved in the Falcons offense. He's averaging about 8 targets per game. I think it's 7.8 to be exact. He's got 39 targets so far in the season, but he's coming off of 2 straight bust weeks. He just hasn't been great because his Falcons offense hasn't really been great. They've really tried to lean on that running game, and it just hasn't worked for them. The Falcons definitely do need to find a way to mix things up if they want to be competitive. It's really reasonable to assume that this Falcons offense is going to be trailing in games. Their defense isn't good. They don't have very much talent really across the board. So Drake London is going to be super necessary to an offense that's really trying to put up points in the end of games where they're trailing. And I don't think there's any reason to assume he can't do that. He's a really talented player. He's big. He's probably going to score several more touchdowns over the course of the season. And he's just, like I said, he's a rookie coming off of 2 really bad weeks. So I think there are going to be a lot of people that are willing to sell low on him. I think I've still got him as a low-end wide receiver 2 the rest of the season. So if you can get him for that value at all, he's definitely worth targeting. I've got a couple sell highs here, only 3 this week, and they do happen to all be running backs. But the first one's going to be Michael Carter. We do see very clearly that he's losing this running back battle in New York to Breece Hall, and honestly, it makes sense. Breece Hall is just a much better player. We saw Breece Hall have almost 200 total yards this last week and a touchdown, but we saw Breece Hall also get tackled at the 1-yard line twice, and then Michael Carter got to come in and mop up those touchdowns. So he ended up with like a 17-point fantasy outing and what really should have been about a 5-point fantasy outing. He didn't do much to deserve those 2 touchdowns. They don't use Michael Carter as a goal line running back. Breece Hall was just gassed after a couple big plays. So Michael Carter is not going to have a very valuable role in this offense going forward. He's going to be the backup in a Jets offense. It's not great. So honestly, I don't think Michael Carter has really any value going forward. I think it's just going to be really hard to start him. If you're starting him, you're just praying he falls in the end zone again. And I don't know how often he's going to do that this season. Michael Carter would be a guy that I'm definitely willing to trade low on. Really sell low even, just because we've seen Breece Hall take over. If you can get anything of value for him, I'd be looking to get out of Michael Carter. The next guy I'd be looking to sell high on is going to be Dalvin Cook. This one kind of hurts me because I have him in a couple of my leagues, but he's clearly losing 3rd down snaps to Alexander Mattison. Madison's getting a lot more of the passing down work. It's just been sort of disappointing to see Dalvin Cook not be necessarily that true workhorse that he's been in the last few years. We've seen his snap share continue to decrease. He had a season low of 56% of the snaps this last week, so that's by no means the workhorse percentage that you expect from him, which is going to be like 70+%. So it's just, he's not getting all the volume. He's not getting all the work that he used to get. So I just don't think he's got that really high-end elite upside that you maybe drafted him to have. I think a lot of us thought that he had a shot to finish this year as a running back 1, or the running back 1. He's going to be a running back 1 the rest of the season. He'll probably be a fringe top 10 guy, but if you can capitalize on that massive game we just had against the Bears and get 2 really good players for him, it'd definitely be something I'd be looking to do. The last guy I'd be looking to sell high on is going to be Melvin Gordon. We saw him have 103 total yards in week 5, and he actually looked pretty good. But Latavius Murray wasn't active for this game, so we don't really know how this Denver Broncos offense is going to shape up at the running back position. Mike Boone actually looked pretty good. I didn't really feel like either one, him or Gordon, was the clear-cut better running back. They did split the passing game routes. I think Melvin Gordon had 21 routes ran, and Mike Boone had 19, so pretty even split there. And Melvin Gordon's still just a fumble away from being benched, so even if Latavius Murray doesn't take a significant number of snaps, we're a single fumble away from Melvin Gordon really riding the bench for probably several games. And I think that a lot of people after last week just view him as a nice running back 2 option. I think he can be that as long as he doesn't fumble or get hurt, but I'd be looking to sell high on him because I think that's about his ceiling, and there's just a lot of risk that could remove that floor for him. So If you can get running back 2 value for Melvin Gordon, I'd be looking to do that. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.